everybody. Welcome to the Sacred Femme Alchemy podcast, a podcast to help you on your sacred feminine journey towards self-love and healing. I'm your host, Lisa Mae Francisco, a sacred feminine guide and mentor. In the podcast, we'll dive deep on how to heal your core wounds, reclaim your feminine power, and liberate your truth so you can be your wild, authentic self. Thanks so much for listening. I'm super excited that you're here. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sacred Femme Alchemy podcast. I'm super excited for this episode because I have a wonderful, beautiful guest. Her name is Sara Folsom of Shake Rising, and Sara and I actually met when I was vacationing with my family in Kauai. My family and I, we have a timeshare there, and I actually don't even know how I found you. Sara, I honestly don't know how I found you or Shake Rising, but I think I was honestly just, I don't know what I was looking for on the internet. And I saw that you're in Kauai and I was like, okay, I have this trip coming up with my family and I have to go to this like Kundalini, like Shake Rising. I have no idea what it is. I wanted to tap into my sensuality. I wanted to take my sister. But before I like dive into that, before I have Sara talk about Shake Rising, I want to share her bio and what she does. So she is the creator of transformational movement practice, Shake Rising. She is a fierce advocate for liberation and uses the modality of Shake Rising to help herself and others experience liberation of the mind. She also owns a brick and mortar fitness studio, which is the home of Shake Rising, called the Sanctuary Kauai. She and her studio are located on the island she grew up on, Kauai, Hawaii. Oh, so beautiful. How did Shake Rising even birth? How did it come to be in this world?
Yeah, it's a really interesting birth story. Thank you for having me and for bringing me onto your podcast.
Of course.
So I love sharing about the birth story of Shake Rising. I have been in fitness now for 10 years, and I have owned my fitness studio for the last 7. Shake Rising is 4 years old. She birthed in 2020. So essentially at that time, I was full personal training and group fitness instructor. And I started teaching this class called Cardio Twerk Fusion, which was essentially, it was fun. It was like burpees, mountain climbers, jumping jacks, high intensity cardio, like definitely an ass kicker. And then get up, circle your hips, shake your ass a little bit.
Yeah.
And I started teaching that in January of 2020. Obviously, you know, the world shut down in March and April. And when I started taking my fitness offerings online through Instagram Live for our community and on Zoom, the one that most people were interested in were women wanting cardio twerk fusion, which was surprising at the time because it was the newest class that I had brought into like the repertoire. And so anyway, we started teaching this class online, and I'm like on Zoom in my living room, you know, shaking my ass and doing burpees. And what would happen is there would be this surge of empowerment and excitement. And then as soon as the Zoom was over and I'd close my computer, I felt so agitated and like irritated.
Wow.
It was like, I was like activating this energy. And then it was like, okay, now I'm in my house alone. And like, totally honest, there was like this sexual energy, this activation, this like sensation of being like horny and turned on.
Oh my God.
And so it started to create excess heat in the body. And I thought, wow, this is something incredibly beneficial, a fitness class that is now not serving to my benefit and is now serving to my detriment. And so from that pain point of being like, this is a thing that isn't working, this is my go-to medicine and it's not working, I was like, I need to do something with this energy. This is a lot of energy that's getting turned on and activated. What do I do with it? And so the first thing I thought was, okay, I'm going to put it into the chakra system.
Right.
It was like almost just the easiest assimilation of this is a lot. I need to put it somewhere. Okay, I'm going to start feeding it through the energy body. I remember that first class where I did that. I was like, I want to try something different. I'm noticing that like, it's a lot of energy. There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of stuff going on. Like my business is closed. Life is closed. We're doing this class. I'm going to try this. And so I started doing that and it was beautiful. And I left the sessions feeling more like nourished and more integrated than just, okay, all right. And so anyway, we took that path, and then fast forward a couple months, we're back in the studio. It's July 2020. And as I'm leading this class that now we started calling Twerk Fusion, I had this experience, which now I believe is like a Kundalini awakening when you hear about that. But at the time, I was just like, what's happening? So I taught the class. I felt this like insane amount of energy buzzing through my body. All of the things you hear about, like unable to speak, unable to understand and comprehend what's happening. I'm like, am I having an adrenaline overdose? There's a thing going on.
Wow.
And the next day when I woke up, I was like different. My brain felt like it opened. And the best way I describe it is like Albert Einstein energy, where I was just like alive, awake, and okay, everything is different now. And I just started writing everything that the class was, everything I said, every move that I did to try and, again, this pain point of being like, I don't know what's happening,
Yeah.
figure this out. And as I started writing this, I started talking to people, realized like, okay, whoa, I'm having like an energetic awakening. This is a real thing. This is not just like
Mm-hmm.
that, is woo woo and out there. Okay. And that writing became the Shake Rising Manual, which again, we switched the name to Shake Rising for all of the obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And yeah, Shake Rising was born from that. And this manual became written. And then we started having these trainings where we taught other women how to teach the class. And here we are 4 years later.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And so how long were you doing that twerk class before you actually had this this reaction of, oh my gosh, I have so much energy? Because it almost seems like it was compounded, right? If you were doing it, I don't even know, daily or however, like how many classes a day, and just not knowing what to do with it. Have you ever done any practices where you felt that amount of just energy like coursing through you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say it took from January to April to be like, okay, whoa, this is like too much. Need to
Wow.
shift this class to make it more integrated. And then from April to July to be like, oh my God, whoa, I just had this like experience in which I'm like understanding life in a different way. I would say in general, like I am prone to like excess energy. Like for sure, my response,
Hmm.
let's go, fire, like the manifestor in human design, Leo in my astrology, like there's a lot of like drive. And so
Yeah.
feeling that can be easy for me and move into like maybe frenetic energy or anxiety. But I've
Mm,
never done any practice yet where I am like high from the inside. And it's not like
wow.
this stimulation of life is making me frenetic. It's there's something inside of me that is now turned on. And I'm like this fountain of youth and vitality. And it's it's so wild to feel because it's like this remembrance of wow, we are way more powerful than we remember. There is so much power in here that we can access.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. And so, did other women also start to say to you, like, I have so much energy, I don't know what to do with it as well when they would leave your classes?
Yes, in addition to crying and like
Mm.
revelations and goosebumps. And I remember we had a co-ed class, which is a little bit different than just for the female bodied individuals. And this guy texted me the next day and he's, what did you do to me? I couldn't sleep all night.
Ah.
That's the energy that we have access to, right? Yeah, it's wild. When we do these 5-day immersions, we just did one in January, the evolution experience, which you saw.
Hmm.
So many women were like, oh my God, I'm so activated and alive. And for me personally, like my composition, 5 days of Shake Rising in a row, I'm like, it's too much for me. Like it's like too much energy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, what's your practice like now? And how do you harness that energy so it's sustainable? Because I know it's like different, right? Like you as a practitioner, facilitator versus you being a participant. And so, how do you balance both? Because you're a vessel
Mhm.
like for this energy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So there's two parts. One, for me personally, I have to have what I call a spaciousness practice, which you
Mm.
can replace that with the word meditation. But for me, meditation feels personally at this current evolution like limiting for me sometimes, where I'm like, I don't need to sit still necessarily, although I can. I just need a place every morning where I am sitting in space, either in prayer, journaling, drawing cards, drinking cacao, meditating in silence, guided meditation. It doesn't matter what the modality is, but there needs to be a space every day for me to create the space so that energy can flow freely and not like in excess or not turning on at all. Right. So that feels really imperative for me. The second piece is that something that's really unique about Shake Rising, and I'm not really even sure why this happened this way or how. There's a lot of Shake Rising where I'm like truly feeling a vessel, and that this practice, I mean, maybe you can feel it from the birth, is so much not mine. It feels like it came in and I was just like, oh, okay, here's this thing that is happening now. There was no part of me that was like, I want to create a movement practice. It just happened. And so a lot of Shake Rising, the philosophy, the practice, the things that we hold to, when I say them, I'm like, how did I think of that? And I
Wow.
realized, think of it, it's just is. And so one of those pieces is in Shake Rising, we call ourselves facilitators instead of a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
because we're facilitating the practice for everyone to receive, including the facilitator. So we hold space in a much different way than one-on-one coaching, for instance. So in
Mm-hmm.
Rising, the way that we hold space is really holding space for ourselves and really asking them to hold space for themselves so that we all feel held. And what that looks like is in the practice, although yes, we can get into the mind of the choreo and the beats, it is
Mm-hmm.
very much like we are in that practice just as much as the participant, meaning like we are crying into the microphone, we are rage screaming, we are having revelations and releases. And it's unique in the way that we've seen how to hold space so far, where it's, okay, I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to watch you and make sure you're liberated. But in doing that, we take away our own liberation for someone else to be liberated, which is not it, right? We want to create a
Mm-hmm.
world of liberation. And the way that we're doing that through Shake Rising is creating this hierarchy where there is no hierarchical teacher and participant. It's like this hierarchy space of we're all going to go there together. It's unique. And so when I have a Shake Rising class, it's 100% my practice too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I loved your practice so much when I first did it with my sisters, because I remember you clearly stating that before class. You're like, I'll probably be crying. It's normal. Like, I'm going to be in it with you, ladies. And it was just so important to know that, like, you were having your experience just as much, or that you needed this container just as much, and that you weren't like the absolute teacher, like the absolute truth, or if there were certain moves that we couldn't do, or some people didn't feel comfortable with, it was like we had our own agency to do what we wanted to do. And I think that's where that liberation comes, of creating that beautiful connection to our bodies and just having it be such a different experience. And so for those who are like, okay, what goes on in this? Is this like some temple? What goes on? Like, you're gonna close the lights or whatever. I would love for you to describe what the actual practice is for
Mhm.
people to experience it. Because I think some people might think, oh, well, that sounds, you can get that practice through samadhi and yoga, or like Kundalini yoga, Tantra, or like working with your arrows. And so I would just love for you to hone in on just like what magic you create. So,
Thank you, babe. Yeah, it's really fun also to describe what Shake Rising is, because the range of experience is so vast. You could hear so many different people say what Shake Rising is. And I love when someone who's seen it online is, oh, Shake Rising, it's this thing, right? And I'm like, kinda. And so before each class, all the facilitators were trained to really describe what Shake Rising is, because it's so vast, to be like, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is how we're going to do it. And so that description is that Shake Rising is a transformational movement practice. We use the modalities of fitness, dance, and energy work, and our end goal is liberation. And what we do with those modalities of fitness, dance, and energy work, and the desire to experience liberation, is we hold these three intentions, and they're the same intentions every single time we practice. And the first part is we're going to activate our life force energy. So we do that through placing all of our attention on this intangible essence within. And you could literally call it whatever you want. You could call it just energy, period. Prana, Shakti, Chi, your Eros. It's that energy that turns us on, and we place our attention there, and that's enough to energize it. We don't need to do anything else. Like, it's happening right here, right now, as we start to think about the life force energy inside of us. That attention is enough to energize it. And then the second intention is to reprogram our subconscious mind. And so how we do that is we repeat these phrases over and over, these affirmations. not because saying something over and over is going to reprogram the brain, but saying something over and over shows us all the places in which we don't believe that. Like when I say over and over, I love myself unconditionally, what ends up happening is I start to hear and see all of these things inside of my mind where I'm like, well, what about this though? What about when you did this? And then I get to reprogram all of these non-conscious beliefs by what's coming up when I say this phrase. And the third intention is to regulate our nervous system. And that's where the shake comes in. So we changed from using the language twerk to shake for many reasons, cultural appropriation being a big one. But the second piece being that we aren't actually twerking. We are shaking as a somatic experiencing tool to release energy from the body that gets stuck there from any past experience. It could be 5 minutes before the podcast started. It could be 15 years ago where you get this fight or flight surge and it gets stuck there. And so again, it's this transformational movement practice. It uses fitness, dance, and energy work. We have the end goal of liberation, and we get there by activating our life force, reprogramming our subconscious, and regulating our nervous system. So that's the philosophy. And what it looks like is like coming into the space, setting the intention through the introduction of Shake Rising, starting to activate the energy through that moment, warming up the body as you would in a workout class, yoga flow, child's pose, whatever big stretch. And then we have this moment of pause where we put all of our attention on the root center, this part of ourself, and we start to energize the life force there by focusing our attention, and we bring in the affirmation. And then as the music begins, we start to activate at the root center through the shaking, through fitness movements like a squat, through dance movements like a hip circle. And then we do that process from the root all the way to the crown. So it's this like energy body workout, this physical body workout, and all of these other pieces happening at once.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot.
It's a lot. No, I remember as soon as you said squats, I was like, oh, I remember during evolution. Like, I was like, damn, Sarah, how many squats are we going to do? But I mean, it's true. It's like a whole mind, body, spirit. Like if you're ever like online, I'll share your information in the show notes. If you're not visiting Kauai, like you should definitely practice, all my listeners out there, practice this experience because it's truly unlike anything I've ever experienced. Where, I mean, as you went through the different phases of like reprogramming your subconscious, but you do it in a really, I think, loving way. Also, just by really demonstrating like the tenderness to it. I mean, even the environment and just the type of energy that you evoke in that environment to make it truly safe and just really help us get into our bodies, I think is just so unparalleled. And it creates the type of like cocoon to go deeper and deeper. And like you said, like you start to notice different things of like your thoughts of like, okay, where am I still holding on to that where I actually don't believe it as I'm saying the mantra or affirmation, and it just comes up. And I think that's just the power of not only just like this practice, but also just working with that Shakti energy, because it's like you work with it and it just heals you in different ways where you didn't even know that you wanted to go.
Yeah, that's it. See, the part that can be challenging in explaining to someone what Shake Rising is, it's because it is healing aspects of self that we have no idea need a healing. So
Yes.
it's like, how do I tell someone that? I feel like I love myself. But then when I say it over and over, I'm like, ooh, but I don't love this. I'm still guilty about this. I'm still wondering if I'm lovable for this. And none of that is in my conscious mind. And so I just got goosebumps just thinking about, again, similar to my experience in the birth where I felt like, whoa, we're way more powerful than we ever imagined. In that same way, it's like, oh, there are way more beliefs happening that we don't actually consciously subscribe to, that we are living under. And if we can access that work in a way where we're squatting and shaking our ass, I'm like, that feels accessible. That feels like something I could do on a weekly basis where I am getting that deep work, but I don't have to go and remove myself from the quote unquote real world, the 3D experience where I want to go to a fitness class or a yoga class or a heels class. And I can access this like deep work within the cocoon and the container of the normalcy of being a human, right?
Totally. And it's almost like, oh my God, like what my sisters, what did you just take me to? Right? I was like, that was a fitness class. But that's the beauty of it, how accessible it is, because I mean, it's like a glow up for all parts of you.
Totally. And it's so interesting. I came from the fitness world, so that is going to be present. But when you get,
Mm.
a shake rising from a different facilitator that has no fitness background, and maybe she's just like all spirit, she's all into the ritual, the
Mm.
ceremony, her shake is like severely less squats, right? And it's just body, and it's like a super sensual maybe. And then one girl who's, a Pilates instructor, she's like adding these jump squats at the root. So it's really cool to be like, okay, here's what's gonna happen, but
Mhm.
the way that's gonna happen, as in like the movements you might get in your personal class with your facilitator, it looks and kind of feels completely different, but the internal experience is the same. Of there's some shit happening in there.
Yeah, yeah. And you're like, hey, I don't know what's gonna come up next. But you did mention sensuality. And so, because like even as I describe it to some people too, it's just, oh, so is it like ecstatic dancing? Like obviously you like shared what actually happens, but is there this level of like how do you tap into sensuality since it's such a huge topic on women trying to connect back to that piece of them, and how do you integrate it into Shake Rising, because it's such a very visceral physical practice to release all of that, especially shame around that, especially like exploring it. Or, I remember when I took the class, I was like looking at some girls dance,
Ooh,
and it's like,
like
oh,
in
like
the
I love how, yeah, right. Like it's okay to do this. I think the best part is just the liberation from not caring, right?
Mhm.
Everyone's just in their own world, interiorizing their experience. So I would love for you to share on that, like the sensuality piece.
It's so huge. And it's interesting. I can recall the last shake I went to, facilitated by a different girl, one of my dear friends, Allie. I didn't feel that piece present as much,
Mm.
right? And so it won't be in every class depending on your facilitator, but essentially for me, the access point to sensuality, I mean, you said it, is freedom. It is that sensual nature, I believe, is in everybody innately, right? We come from sex. People have sex and babies are born. That is a blueprint of like how we are here. But the reason that it gets maybe distorted or turned off is because there are so many societal beliefs about what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, who you do that with, where you do it, how you do it, when you do it, what does it look like. And so what feels really beautiful is this invitation where when you're doing a hip circle and you're touching your body, how do you feel right now? And then it's, oh, I feel uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable, what part of you feels uncomfortable? And then it's, wait, why do I feel uncomfortable circling my hips and touching my body in a room full of women? What is actually making me uncomfortable? And for me, I think it's getting to that root that will clear away anything that blocks us from accessing the sensuality. So for a lot of women, it's, well, I don't want to be too much, or
Mm.
I don't want to be judged and ostracized. And these beliefs are incredibly protective in that in the past, women have been judged and ostracized for being sensual. And so therefore we put up a wall because being judged and ostracized comes against our survival. We are biologically programmed to be a part of a pack. And so we like shut that part down because it's, I don't want to risk my survival, my community, my connection with women. And then as we start to see, oh, wait, that's actually a belief that's not even present. And we start to open and open, and then it's slowly, and all of a sudden we're like moving sensually without fear or shame or embarrassment. And so for me, the access point to really anything we want to experience that we haven't yet, be it sensuality or partnership or the career, the dream job, the money, it's looking in to see like, why do I feel uncomfortable with this? Why do I feel uncomfortable claiming I want the money, the partner, the sensuality? And finding that root and attuning to that, because most of the time it's some belief that is deeply implanted that we are living under that we don't actually subscribe to.
Mm. And so
Mhm.
when you started this practice, or when it like found you, did you feel that you had some like residual issues around your sensuality?
I was in such a journey when Shake Rising was born. So it was COVID, right?
Yeah.
So I broke up with my partner in January, and then COVID happened. So it was like, whoa, okay.
Whoa.
Well, There is no chance of any human connection. Okay. And let's see, how old was I? 26. And I realized, wow, I haven't actually been single since I've been 16 years old. I've gone from one partner to the next. So therefore, I haven't actually been celibate longer than a couple of months. And that was like kind of dropped me to my knees with a little bit of
Wow.
grief. And so I started reading the Mary Magdalene manuscript, which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially, in my perspective, like how sex can be a spiritual practice and how sex is so much more than what we've seen. And so I'm reading this in January. I'm doing
Wow.
this practice and I'm not making the connection yet. And then when the
Wow.
experience happens in July, where I have this awakening, a friend, when I'm like telling him about it, he's like, it sounds like you had a Kundalini awakening. And I was like, wait a second. And I like go to the book and I open the diagram of what it looks like when you have a Kundalini awakening. And I was like, holy shit, like all of it makes sense. But
Wow.
where I was at, and I think what really helps when looking at these parts of ourselves is just like this lens of curiosity of being like, okay, this is really interesting that like sex feels really important to me, that to the point where I'm single and it's COVID and it's like really affecting me. What is that? Instead of being like trying to outsource and get it or make it wrong, just what is that? And starting to look at it. And so that lens of curiosity, I think a lens allows for insight and inspiration to come through because you're like, I'm open to see what's happening here. Um, Also growing up on Kauai, like I would say I have way less hangups than probably most people because I mean, it's a beach town. We're all half naked all the time.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even cross my mind until someone says something and I'm like, oh, people are tripping about the Instagram of Shake Rising. I had no idea. And then I look at it, I'm like, huh, yeah, it's a bunch of hot chicks like dancing. Okay. Yeah, but it takes me a minute, you know? So yeah, I guess ignorance is bliss.
Oh my God. I think it's kind of wild that at the same time, it's like this, like you said, this thing wanted to be birthed through you. It's
Mhm.
somehow, as you were describing your story to me, it was if that you were chosen in a way where you like, and you even said yourself, I don't own it.
Mhm.
It's like you being the conduit for it to just come out into this world. And so, did you ever have any hangups about, oh, I don't want it? No, you can take it back. Like, I don't want this.
So, you know what? It's interesting how many women have come to Shake and been like, whoa, I dreamt of this. Or, whoa, I do this already. I just didn't have words for it. I've never done it with other
Yeah.
people. And what I've come to believe is that Shake wanted to be born through someone. And the only difference was I was like, okay, versus other women may have been like, ooh, yeah, let's mix like fitness with dance, with energy work, and then maybe didn't say okay. And
Mm.
so at first, I feel like it was hard for me to claim like I'm the creator of Shake Rising because I was like,
Mhm.
it's just happened to me. And the hang up for me was realizing you said yes. There is a power in that. You do have leadership and authority here and agency here. Like you are the creator of Shake Rising. You did do this. And I was like, oh, okay. Yes, this did happen. So it's this beautiful balance of remembering how it came through, but then also remembering that I said yes, and now I'm the steward here. And so what that looks like is facilitating in authenticity and integrity, being like, this is going to happen. We're all in a practice together, and not being like, let me show you how to do it. But also like Kali or Durga, really holding this mission, holding this entity, this essence of Shake Rising with ferocity and integrity, like with a sword. Like this is a brand that is protected through US patent and copyright. This is something that someone can't take this name and make it something else. Like this is me saying, okay, yes, this is a big thing given to me, but I'm gonna steward it like a mama. So it's really the hang up for me is me fearing my own leadership And like, I can really feel this like tender part of feeling really let down by leaders when I was young, be it like my caregivers or a stint that I did in church, and like seeing like hypocrisy and seeing how I would put people on a pedestal and they would be human and I'd be devastated. And so I fear that like someone will put me there and then they'll find out that I'm just a human being. So it's a lot of me being like, it's okay if they put you on a pedestal and they're let down. That has nothing to do with you. You stay in
Wow.
integrity. You hold this mission. You've been chosen, feels like different. You've said yes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's something that I tell the facilitators all the time is like, when we facilitate Shake, we're having our own practice. Me holding this mission and carrying it forward, I am like constantly being activated in my own bullshit. I constantly get to see, holy shit, okay, this is a subconscious program that like I don't subscribe to, that I have to look at. Like it's all day, you know?
You're like, okay, 10x. I
Yeah.
can stop the script. Okay, done.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's hard, and I love that you touched upon it, because it's like, how do we, as people in like spirituality or in this industry, also get to be human? Like, sometimes people put you on pedestals, or they think you know. And it's even for me in my business, sometimes it was like, oh, well, I want to keep on retaining that one-on-one client. And it's at the end of the day, I just need to give them the tools that they need to do to work on themselves, because I don't know any better. Like, I think before and I was talking about this with a girlfriend the other day, of like just the spiritual vanity and ego that comes up from being put in this quote unquote position, and then being humbled of, I don't know any more than you do. Like, I really don't. And it's hard to balance both, of, like you said, of wanting to steward this thing and saying yes and having so much passion behind it and being able to carry the torch, but then also at the same time knowing, like, at the end of the day, it's service to something that's so much like greater,
Yeah.
and I love that you're spreading your word, and you're having other facilitators. So it's not just you, it's like truly this ripple effect where people can experience this magic.
Yeah, babe, it's this piece. So in Shake Rising, we have 5 core values, and they are my personal core values. And the first one is integrity, vulnerability, authenticity, obviously liberation, but this piece that we call divine duality, where we do not have to choose human or God, spiritual or human.
Mm.
We are trying to exist as both, because the truth is we are human. We are on this earth. We do have nervous systems. We are going to get triggered. We are going to act like assholes. There is no way around that. We will get in our ego. We will get jealous. We will get envious. We will talk bad about someone. And when we hold ourselves to a standard of being so spiritual and so godlike that we're not going to do that, it's just disappointment after disappointment. And other
Yeah.
people put us on the pedestal if we're holding ourselves there, right? And so it's so funny. Shake Rising feels like the manifestation of divine duality. Like, we're literally shaking our ass to access the highest version of self. That could not be more duality, right? Like, so human, so godlike or spirit-like, so divine. And I want to live my life like that. Whether that means crying in the class, swearing in the class, staring at myself in the mirror because I'm feeling hot and I'm looking at myself. There's these pieces that we're like really trying to hold of, yeah, we are human. We are here to be human and the best humans that we can be. And the spiritual spaces and the spiritual communities, I got really rocked last year of 2023 of feeling like so deeply supported by my spiritual community as I was having this awakening and realizing, wow, there's another way to live life, which is just literally more aware. And it feels juicy. And then that becoming really constricting and being like, oh, shoot, now I don't even know how to exist in the real world. Now I feel weird being around people who are drinking alcohol, or I feel weird if I drink alcohol, or if I have non-conscious sex one night. And it's, whoa, okay, we went too far. The spiritual community, the things we're learning to elevate our awareness to live juicier, that only feels good if we're actually living juicier. If we're learning that to then remove ourselves from this world, like, honestly, what's the point, right? Yeah.
Oh my God. And I love that you talk about that, because sometimes, and this is like an issue that I have with the spiritual world too, and this is something for me to look at. I have a really difficult time of being around people that are just not grounded on earth. And that's just like my own thing of like abandonment issues, right? Of like someone being physically present, but them not present in the mind because maybe they're, I don't know, in the 5D or something. And so it's just like, how do you get to have that human experience of just like saying yes, accepting yourself, doing the work? It's like this whole journey in itself anyway. And so being able to tap into that and just slow down and just be like, okay, like what's the other thing that I have to look at? But and it's just no one's perfect. No
Totally.
one.
Totally.
Yeah.
And looking at why we do what we do. If we're choosing, for instance, not to drink alcohol, right? That's a huge thing in
Mm-hmm.
my personal spiritual community. Great. And what is the reason for that? Right?
Yeah.
Is it because I want to appear spiritual and I feel like somehow if I drink alcohol, I'm less spiritual? Or is it because I truly feel like drinking alcohol takes me out of my cognizant abilities and I don't want to have that experience? Is there
Mm-hmm.
wiggle room there or is it a black and white? And what really kind of gets me, and I think this helps a lot of people in the spiritual community, it helps me, is a lot of us came to spirituality because some way or another, religion felt constricting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having to believe in a very, very narrow-minded vision, or you're going to hell or you're going to heaven. And so then we found like this freedom. But then when does our freedom become the same indoctrination? And you hear, oh yeah, like it just was like kind of like low vibe or like low consciousness. Of course, that will happen. Of course, you go into space and you're like, oh, wow, there's not very much awareness here. Okay. But to create that separation is the exact same thing the church does when they're like, don't be unequally yoked. And it's, whoa, dude, we just did the exact same thing. We like created something new. So we didn't have to do that. And then we did the exact same thing. Cause I think as humans, we want to know wrong, black, white so that we can be
Mm-hmm.
good. And I just don't think it goes like that. I think the best is like this
Mm-hmm.
gray space of being like, oh, this hurt your feelings. Oh, okay. Well, now I have awareness and I don't want to act like that. Oh, this hurt me. Oh, okay. And just like continuing to meet life, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 And I love that because it goes back to that divine duality piece that you were talking about of just like, also, how do you source those answers for yourself? Right? What makes sense to you? There is no actual right or wrong way, or you don't necessarily have to be dogmatic about it, but it's like what works for you and your own body. And that's why I love that you have this somatic practice of healing, because you get to really feel into the sensations. You have emotional sensations, you have physical sensations, but do you actually have a language for them, right? So instead of just like following the rules of what spirituality like looks like, it does it make sense to me? How does it feel for me and my body and all of that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. So what is next for Shake Rising? I think you guys are always have some amazing thing popping up all the time. I love it.
It's so good. So essentially, okay, I'll start small vision and go big vision. So in a
Uh-huh.
couple of days on Thursday, we're making this on a Tuesday. Myself and another Shake Rising facilitator, Allie, who I've mentioned once, she works closely with me on like the back end growth of Shake Rising. We'll be leading a retreat on Kauai, which is where I'm from. And that feels beautiful to bring some women over. And it's going to be like cacao every morning and Shake Rising in the afternoon. And our intention is deep transformation alongside big playful energy. So that like duality piece where we're not like removing ourselves to have a spiritual experience. We're having these transformational experiences and then going to play in community. So that's going to be amazing. And then we end on a Monday, we rest on a Tuesday, and on a Wednesday, we fly to the East Coast, which is like a huge pilgrimage from Kauai. Yeah. And I'd say wish that we had more space, but it's chill. And we're going to be in Raleigh and Richmond and in Atlanta sharing Shake Rising with new communities.
Oh,
Yeah. So the minutia of it, the fun travel is for the bigger picture of essentially the desire is that there are more women who experience Shake Rising and then who desire to facilitate Shake Rising. And then therefore there are more women that get to experience it. And if they want facilitate it, and if they don't want to facilitate it, we have a Shake Rising community where they can come in and take a free Shake Rising class once a month and have a community call once a month and just create like that like-minded sisterhood. So there's all these different access points, but essentially we want to share the practice so that more people can share the practice, because the vision feels like. And again, I'm just like following whatever it's supposed to. And it's the renditions have shifted, but the vision has always been this global movement practice with thousands of facilitators all over the world so that more of us can experience living in freedom. And then more of us get to experience what it's like to live in a really juicy world. And so to get there, it's just like constantly going out and sharing and coming home and recharging. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Beautiful. And I think as you were talking, it made me, you said, this community of sisters, of women coming together. And one of the most beautiful things is that when you are in a group of women, you can definitely heal any wounds you have around relating to the feminine. When you're, like you said, if jealousy comes up or envy, as you were saying before, and sometimes that does come up, and so I just love that there is a space to explore that as well,
Yeah. And name it and normalize it. Like it's so normal to be jealous. It's so normal to watch a woman in her sensual expression and feel threatened. It's just so deep in our DNA, and how amazing to be like, wow, I'm feeling jealous. I'd love to share this with you and work through it. And maybe I just really want to be your friend. Maybe I have a hang up around sensual women because I don't trust my partner, like whatever the thing is, right? And this like beauty, like when the Shake Rising facilitators come together, the way we relate, it's so, yeah, it makes me feel so tender because it's like, it's very real. And that we have these like incredible, like high experiences, and like the one-to-one looking in each other's eyes of, hey, can I share something with you? The way that you communicated this earlier, I feel challenged by it. And I'm curious if we can like practice certain communication tactics to relate better, like that kind of stuff that's uncomfortable, that makes the real deal. That's happening all the time, which feels intense, but it also feels so real. Like I could tell any of the girls in my Shake Rising community if they've hurt my feelings. And I know they could tell me the same thing. And it could be just like, Sarah, sometimes you talk really fast and really loud, and I feel like you're interrupting me. And I'm like, whoa, amazing. Thank you for letting me know. And it's like that kind of relating. I haven't been able to access that many other places yet.
No, and even with people that you're friends with, or just, in your close circle, maybe like outside of Shake Rising. And it's so interesting because one of the girls that I did my tantric yoga training with, she and I were living together for a little bit. We were in Greece. And, I think what made it so impactful was the fact that we were both aware, right? Like we were both aware of when we were acting a certain way or when something triggered us, and then just being able to share it with the other person and claim it and be like, oh, okay, that was probably like my own thing. This is what's coming up for me. And that's why I just love this journey, taking it back to spirituality of just, for me, that is so integral of having that self-awareness and that foundation, because it's the thing that's going to help you communicate. It's the thing that's going to help you understand yourself better. It's the thing that's going to be able to help you like say to someone like, hey, that hurt my feelings, or maybe you spoke a certain way that really challenged me. And that's what I love, and how beautiful to have that spread in your mission of creating that true intimacy, especially as women, where we do feel really jealous of each other, or there's something there where we don't want to relate to each other. And like, we won't succeed if we're always pitting ourselves against each other. Like we just won't.
And it's so much less enjoyable. This is the first time, I started my fitness business at 23,
Wow.
at 18, but I opened my studio at 23, and I was like solo, like no,
Wow.
no financial help from parents or partners or the government. It was like me, and it worked, but it was so hard. It was so grind, boss babe culture. And with Shake Rising, I feel like I am on a team of women that work for Shake Rising alongside of me. No one works for me. We're like working for this mission together. And it's so much more enjoyable to be in collaboration and connection with women, even when those ruptures come up and we have to be vulnerable and be like, oof, I fucked up and I'm totally triggered and now I'm taking it out on you, whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
It's so much more enjoyable to feel like supported. Like I could go to someone and just be like, I'm feeling terrible and I just want to be held in that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. I love this. I love this so much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on here. It was so lovely to connect and chat and hear more about your story. I'm definitely going to put everything Shake Rising in the show notes. So for those that are listening, tuning in, if you haven't taken a Shake Rising class, it's such a beautiful practice with Sara and her team. And I will definitely put everything in there so you can check out how you can be a part of this amazing mission.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's so good to be here with you.
Oh my God, amazing. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and I will catch you on the next episode.